What's going on, everybody? It's Joel here, and today we're going to be doing the review of the Nike React Metcon. Okay, so this has been my most requested review of like the last 3 weeks of my life, and rightfully so. The big thing with this shoe is the fact that it has the React midsole in it. So this shoe came out right about the first week of December. That's right around where my birthday is, and that is normally when the Metcon Flyknits typically come out. Except this year, this came out instead. So presumably, this is going to be the Flyknit Metcon going forward, and I would assume so because it has a Flyknit upper. It's not called the Metcon Flyknit or the DSX or anything like that anymore. It's just called the React Metcon. So if you are unfamiliar with Nike's React technology, it's like the responsive, reactive foam midsole technology that they've been using in their running shoes. I actually am a big fan of it, and the main reason for that is because it's not that squishy, it's not that soft, it's more reactive, it's more responsive. It's fairly comfortable for a training shoe, but the reason why I really like this shoe is the fact that the React midsole is stable, it's responsive, it's comfortable enough. You can do pretty much anything you want to do with this shoe, but it's not plush, it's not soft, it's not what a lot of people are saying that the React is. So first off, the design of this shoe is gonna be a love it or hate it kind of thing. Personally, I really like the way that this shoe looks. I know a lot of people aren't down with the big Nike logo right across the top of the shoe, but I don't mind it all that much, to be honest with you guys. It kind of has like this marbled look to it with the speckled upper. We have a slip-on design, one-piece upper. It does have Flyknit, and that is the main material throughout the upper. It's got a little bit of stretch to it, but it's not a whole lot. One side of the Flyknit is bare, and then the other side of the Flyknit is actually laminated, so you can see that it's a little bit more shiny, and presumably that is for increased protection against the rope because it is in the lateral side, and that's usually where the rope is making contact, and you'll see the most amount of wear with the shoe. The outsole of the shoe is the full-length sticky rubber outsole that is the same exact thing that you're going to find on the Metcon 5. There's no differences between that, and that's a good thing. I really like the outsole of the Metcon 5. Some people hate the high sidewalls, Thanos chin, but I don't mind it. It kind of just blends into this black colorway, so whatever. There is the heel clip at the back, and that's made out of a hard TPU that's supposed to help you slide up the wall when you do handstand push-ups, and then it's supposed to stick into the little rower footholds. I don't really personally notice that doing a whole lot, so for me it's a wash. It's nice that it's there, but I could live without it. And then on this model you get this big Metcon logo around the rear part of the shoe, which is just kind of like an overlay. It's not like TPU. There's a little bit of a heel cup in there, and that is your heel counter of the shoe. And it does a pretty good job in securing your heel in place, despite the shoe being a slip-on type shoe. Now, the laces on this shoe are non-existent, so it kind of has that water shoe look. I know some people hate that, but I personally do not mind it. This is the same kind of lacing system that you're going to find on the SF that I did a video on not too long ago. And to be honest with you, I love this lacing system. I think it's great because I am the laziest lacer known to man, and it just makes putting shoes on that much faster for me. So one thing that I'm not noticing on this shoe, which is a positive thing, is that the outsole is not separating at any spot of the shoe from the upper. So I've been using these pretty religiously for the last 3 weeks, and with my Metcon 5s, it was almost immediately an issue with the outsole separating. But I think that's because the upper of that shoe was a little bit more rigid, whereas this upper is very, very flexible and moves with the outsole very well. So I don't think you're going to run into any issues with the outsole separating from the upper of the React Metcons. So diving into the inside of the shoe, we do have the drop-in midsole that is normally found on Nike's Metcon series shoes, except this one is the React midsole. So it is just one long piece of React, and like I said before, it's not that soft. It's comfortable. It provides enough underfoot cushioning, but what I really like about it is that it is very, very responsive and reactive, just like their foam is designed to be. The drop on the shoe is unknown. I actually usually just tweet to Nike and they have an answer for me right away, but this time around they didn't give me any answers. But this shoe feels like it's a 4mm drop, maybe a 5mm drop, definitely not 6mm like the Flyknit Metcons from before. This is a much more neutral feeling shoe. There's not a whole lot of arch support in this, which I really, really enjoy. And like with all Metcon shoes, you can take this midsole and you can put it in any other one and it'll fit right in. You could use the hyper lifts, stick them right under this, and they'll work. So if you wanted that extra little bit of boost to the heel of the shoe, then you could do that with the hyper lift insoles, assuming you have Metcon 5s. Another thing that I really like about these shoes, and that's probably because of the Flyknit upper, is the fact that they are a little bit more lightweight. They're just over 12 ounces for a men's size 10. I weighed them in at like 12.10 ounces, so that's a fairly light training shoe by today's standards. When sizing your React Metcons, I'm going to say go with your normal training shoe size if you have a normal or narrow width foot. If you have a wider foot, you're going to want to size up because they do run a little bit on the narrow side. So I personally got these in a size 10, which is my normal training shoe size, but I also bought the 10.5 just because Nike's sizing's kind of been all over the place lately. And when I initially put the 10s on, I felt like they were a little bit on the narrow side. The length was actually perfect, but I felt like they were a little narrow. I stuck it out, I broke them in, and eventually they became very comfortable and they fit my foot actually perfect. So with the 10.5, initially I thought that they were more comfortable because they were a little bit wider. The length actually wasn't all that different between the 10 and the 10.5, but they were initially more comfortable because of the width. And that was mainly in the like metatarsal area of the shoe. I think if I were to use that one for a longer extended period of time, they would become a little bit too loose. So I'm going to say go with the tighter fitting width because it will break in over time. And an issue that I heard from other people was that they're not that great for people that have like wider ankles. For me, I have pretty skinny ankles, so I did not have that issue. But if you have like a wider ankle or wider foot, it might be a little bit difficult to get your foot inside of the Metcon Flyknit because of the slip-on design. So the reason why there's even a Flyknit Metcon in the first place is because it's supposed to be a just much more flexible shoe than the normal Metcon offerings. The Metcon 5 is a very flexible shoe. It's definitely the most flexible out of all the standard Metcons. But the React Metcon is just leagues and above the Metcon 5 in terms of flexibility. This is the best example of a Flyknit Metcon that Nike has ever come out with. I thought the Metcon 5s were also very comfortable shoes. The forefoot on those shoes was extremely plush, but almost too plush. It was a little dull feeling for me. It wasn't that responsive. And the React midsole in this shoe performs much, much better in terms of response, comfort, and just overall flexibility of the shoe. The React Metcons were absolutely made for plyometric movements. Burpees are excellent to do in these shoes because the forefoot is so flexible. As with double unders, the forefoot is very flexible, but since the React midsole is very responsive, you never really lose track of your double unders like you do with softer shoes. I actually had that issue with my Metcon 5s because the toe box or the toe area of the shoe was so soft and mushy that it would mess up my double under timing. Rebounding box jumps is excellent to do in these shoes as well. Running is excellent in these shoes. The heel of the shoe is still a little clunky, But if you're a forefoot striker like I am, or a midfoot striker, you're gonna really like running in these shoes. The React midsole provides extremely good underfoot cushioning without being too soft. It's very responsive. I could run for extended periods in the shoe, absolutely no problem. I could take this out for a 5K, I could take this out for a 10K. You could do any kind of runs that you're doing in a typical WOD in the shoe without any issues. They're just very, very good, comfortable, responsive, plyometric, and running shoes. But of course, what would a Metcon be if it wasn't stable? So the React Metcons carried over the same exact outsole that was found on the Metcon 5, which I thought was excellent. I thought it was plenty stable enough to do pretty much any lifts. It has this extended heel area that has these outriggers on the sides that gives you a little bit more contact area with the ground without making the shoe feel all that bulky. So like I mentioned earlier, the React midsole on this shoe is not soft, it's not comfortable, or it's not overly soft. It's not overly plush. It is very responsive, it's very reactive, and it is very stable. So I typically do not like deadlifting in my Metcons. I find that they're typically a little bit too high and too disconnected from the ground, but I had absolutely no issues slapping some weight on and going for an easy 500-pound deadlift with my Metcon Reacts. I thought that they were plenty stable, power delivery was excellent, ground feel was excellent. I actually think that their ground feel is probably better than any of the other Metcons because they're just a little bit more flexible. Another thing that I really like about these shoes is that they brought the drop down to something like a 4mm drop, which is not the flattest, but it's plenty fine to do any kind of deadlifting movements. It's stable. I personally do not like the raised heel. When it came to squatting movements, I found that these shoes were excellent. I didn't notice any kind of issues with the shoes being too flexible or too soft or too mushy or anything. I think the React midsole is the perfect blend of underfoot cushioning without being unresponsive, still providing excellent power delivery. And I really like that these shoes do not have a 6mm drop. I found these shoes to be the best for Olympic weightlifting movements. I thought jumping movements in these shoes was just excellent. Like I said, they're extremely reactive. You push into the ground, you get a good amount of energy going up off the ground, and I felt always very grounded when I made my landings in these shoes. I was able to adjust my landings because of just how flexible they were. And I have not shied away from any lift in my React Metcons just because they had a softer midsole or anything. I think that these are excellent lifting shoes, and they're among the best training shoes for lifting purposes in 2019. So since these presumably are taking over the Flyknit Metcons, they do cost the same amount at $150, which is $20 more than your standard flagship Metcon 5 or Nano 9. And in my opinion, I think that $20 is completely warranted. For me, these are easily one of my favorite shoes. This is probably my favorite Metcon of all time. It's lightweight, it's stable, it's flexible, it's comfortable enough. I feel like I can do pretty much anything in this shoe. The stability for me is excellent. I don't have any kind of issues with the midsole being too soft, too plush, not reactive or responsive enough. I think that this is the best blend of all of the facets that you need of a training shoe in one package. I think the only thing that's going to keep people from buying this is the way that it looks, because it really is a love it or hate it kind of thing. If Nike were to sell this midsole by itself, they could easily charge like $40-50 and I think people would buy it. It's that good. I really think that this is the best midsole material that Nike's ever put in a Metcon, and it's easily worth the extra $20 compared to your Metcon 5. I highly recommend that if you're looking for a flexible, comfortable enough training shoe, that you look into buying the React Metcons, because these are the truth. This might be my favorite training shoe of 2019. So if you guys have any questions about the React Metcon, feel free to leave them in the comment section. And as always guys, please hit that like button, subscribe, and thanks for watching.